Welcome to Dear Art Producer, a podcast connecting the photography and video community with art producers. Drawing on her agency experience some years ago, photography agent Heather Elder penned an open letter to art producers discussing the finer points of working with one another. This podcast takes that idea and will introduce you to different art producers, share the stories of their diverse career paths, explore what it means to stay relevant, and examine industry topics such as marketing, estimating, directing, websites, and more.
Hi, welcome to Dear Art Producer. I am your host, Heather Elder, and I thought it would be interesting to expand on the Dear Art Producer format and start conversations with other roles in the creative process. So today we welcome Monica Zaffarano, Photoshoot producer and founder of Trybe Production Collective. I've known Monica for years and have enjoyed all the jobs she's produced for us. She's fun, she's flexible, and she's so easy to work with. Mostly, though, she's a friend. Welcome, Monica.
Thanks, Heather.
How are you?
It's nice to be here.
Absolutely. I just was so looking forward to seeing you today and catching up with you. We don't often get to have face-to-face for sure. Yeah. And we don't often get to have catch-up. We were just talking that often when people are reaching out to each other in the industry, it's because they need something and it's quick and you don't get that catch-up time. Yeah. So it was nice this morning to get caught up in your life.
Absolutely. It's kind of extraordinary that there's certain people that make a difference that make you pause because they're people that you actually like. You can tell that you're going to like them, and it's rewarding to have the opportunity to just hang out.
And I absolutely feel that way.
And drink our coffee.
Exactly. I like to start off learning about the path that someone has taken to their job, because in our business, it's so varied.
It is.
And especially as a producer, whether you are an art producer or you're a photo shoot producer, that word producer, means so many different things. So maybe tell us a little bit about your background and share with the audience how you got to where you are.
It's kind of an interesting journey, but it's been really organic because I started out as a ballerina. I don't know if you know
I didn't know that. Oh, that's surprising.
And then,
not surprising, but interesting.
Which took me then to musical theater and then to acting and then to modeling. And I lived overseas. I came back. And while I was here and pursuing acting, it was something about that time in my life. I loved it. I was an understudy at Steppenwolf. That was my last coup de grace in the theatrical world. And did a movie, co-starred a movie. So I did a lot of really fun things and a ton of commercials and whatnot. But there was something about my awareness of when I was on set and sitting in the chair, I felt very privileged and it felt very odd to me. I was the one that kind of whisked in while everybody else is building the environment, and I would whisk in. They would do my makeup, they would do, clothing, wardrobe, and then I'd go and do my thing and leave. And I just thought the playground around me is where I wanted to be. The playground of those building, that was the tribe of people that I really wanted to play with. Mm-hmm. And so I was sort of keenly aware of that at a very, early on. And the acting thing felt a little bit like an ill-fitting coat. Like I felt like a bit of an imposter. And, again, I just wanted to play in that playground. So at some point I decided I got back into my dance roots. I actually started a stage show in town, which was pretty wonderul at a 300-seat house. And I packed it every time I put it on.
Didn't know any of this.
Oh, yeah. And that would go in further in depth at a later time off mic.
With a glass of wine that time.
Yeah, because that's that was a fun journey. But as a result of that, I have a lot of really good friends that came to support me, and they hooked me into this nonprofit in town in Chicago that I started. I got hired to produce their biannual events, which then put me into the role of producer, orchestrating a production. And as a result of both those things, a couple of photographers that I had worked with as a model said, "Hey, you're producing these big things. Can you produce this little photo shoot?" Including the recently passed Mark Hauser. That he was one of the first jobs that he hired me to go to, I think it was Cincinnati or something. And it sort of became this aha moment. I didn't really even know that position, the role of photo producer, existed. And So that's sort of when it started, is that I started leaning into doing these little smaller projects for photographers around town. And, I knew everybody because I'd been an actor for so long and a model for quite a while. And so it was a natural segue to production. And then when I decided to do it, I put a landing page on LinkedIn. And the timeline was something like June, July of a particular year, probably 15 years ago. I decided, you know what, this is a real thing. Right. So I put a landing page on LinkedIn and just started putting it out there. And I'm a big fan of manifesting. And somehow within that first year, I got a really beautiful client, a bread and butter client that came my way, and I just started getting busy because it just all made sense. Yeah. Like every facet of things that I've done in my life, and it all was brought together. It clicked. Yep.
It clicked. Wow. Okay, well, recently you rebranded your production company and called it Trybe Production Collective. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about what Trybe is, how it came about, what the reason for rebranding?
Well, I was Zaffarano Productions for all the years. Mm-hmm. And, production is a collective journey. Production, you need everybody, every cog in the wheel to make a successful production. And I think that's one thing I'm kind of known for or one thing I value, which then probably resonates with how people know me, is I care about everybody on my crew.
You do.
And, to PAs, to anybody, drivers, whatever. And so it is really, truly a collective. And it's not, I didn't want to be the solo artist anymore. I didn't want to do it alone. Mm-hmm. And after years of taking on a lot, and, I started traveling and I expanded to LA and got very busy very quickly. And at some points got too busy for one person. And really, when you are in that world, if you're not prepping or wrapping or producing on any given day, I mean, this pretty much was my life, doing all those things, Uh-huh. And so at some point I wanted to be in this journey with somebody else. I wanted to be with other people. And now at this point I've produced in some large cities and small cities, and in Europe and in India.
So do you partner with people in those cities, or are your partners here?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
At this point, I've had enough. Like, I've produced in Mechanicsburg and figured out, I've amassed a nice crew list of people that I really enjoy working with and I've worked with repeatedly. So I decided to rebrand. I had a tough year with sort of realization of many things. And I decided I wanted to lean into what I'm good at. And what I'm good at is client liaising. And I love people. And so I decided that I would expand, and, I wanted to allow for other people to jump on. And so there is a gal locally that we're still working through the detail of how we do it, but is somebody that I'm hoping to partner with, who can handle the production and the logistical pieces, and I will be client liaising. So the development of the company was to share the journey. Mm-hmm. Number one, I love employing people, and frankly, I wanted to restructure the company to be more like a film company. So because as the business, I know I'm jumping ahead to some more topics, but jumping ahead,
it's great.
For a few years now, I've done some sort of freelance art buying where either art buyers are so slammed because of the internal restructuring of some companies that they will short circuit. They'll come to me and say, "Hey, can I send you a deck? Can you tell me who that might be right for this?" And I've managed to place some people in jobs. And so that's happening more and more. And then on top of it, there's a lot of clients that have an internal creative group that will handle the creative, and they'll reach out to me directly. So I've got a few client directs, and people have been coming to me and I love that piece. I love, because I know so many people out there. I've worked with an array of wonderful shooters across the world, and if they're right for it, I want to put them forward.
Well, it's such a natural part of your job, given all the productions you've touched
it
and
allows
the
me to
styles you've gotten to know.
It allows me to have a bit of the creative, I'm a part of the ground floor part, and I love that piece.
And that's happening more and more.
Yes, it is.
And it is happening very organically. No one kind of decided, now I'm going to do this. It's just someone had the idea that, I've worked with this producer. They might know. And, and I think everything has changed so much in our industry, and people are finding jobs and resources and are being very nimble about how they do things. And clients directly are often, reaching out to people like you.
Yeah, well, and I think for the flip, and I'm curious to know what you think about it, but for you, like you're somebody that I've admired ever since you've come on my radar, because I just feel like how you work in the world is just, you've got a lot of ethics and I have a great amount of respect for you, Heather, and your group. But I would imagine the same token, like people are coming to me to find shooters. The same thing where reps are growing a production company in-house.
Yes.
Because they'll just handle things soup to nuts. They'll handle things from start to finish. So that's changing, right? That
is changing. I mean, I don't do that. We don't handle the production part of what our photographers shoot, but I do know that there are some rep groups that do that. Yeah. And I've thought about that idea a little bit because I'm always evolving. Yeah. I'm always trying to stay current and relevant.
And that's also what I respect a lot about you.
Thank you. It's such a changing market that I think that if I didn't work hard to stay relevant, I would be doing a disservice to the people that I represent.
100% agree.
And I have thought about this idea of partnering with certain producers and kind of not repping them, but showcasing them as part of what we offer. And I just hadn't ever thought through it enough to make it a thing. But I know that there's a handful of producers that we've worked with that are top notch and have really strong reputations with the people out there in the world. And wouldn't it be great if there was this kind of, by being on our roster, there was some sort of verifying or, maybe that's the wrong word, but it was just, a collaboration, a public collaboration. Yeah. And I just never figured out how to make that
You kind of have your hands full, girl.
I do have my hands full, but I think there's something there. Yeah. I do think there's something there because the other part of it is photographers are really loyal to their producers. So sometimes it's hard to get a new person in because they're with that person. So, there's that challenge as well.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, I think our industry is just so full of opportunity right now if you can figure out what the opportunities are and how to monetize them.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
And you're doing that. I think, you're absolutely doing that. You touched on something about when I asked you that question of, are the people you work with local or are they all over the place? And what I've realized from working with so many different producers, that it is necessary for you to have someone. Because if I'm working on a job with you and we're just in the estimating phase of the job, you might be on a job.
Oh, of course.
While it's happening.
I usually am.
And I still need you.
And you need something yesterday
and immediately. And to hear you're not available isn't helpful. Although I'm respectful and I understand, it's hard for me to go back to my people and be like, well, we have to wait a couple days because she's out in the middle of nowhere. Right. So what I've been noticing is that producers have been having that other person so they can tag team and it's a little bit interchangeable. Absolutely. So that, and where that message gets communicated most effectively is through that first person. So my relationship is with you. You need to make me feel okay that Jane is going to handle this.
Well, typically what happens for me in my circumstance with that is that I having the ability to have a second right-hand person on, I can, once you get to set, everything should be moving smoothly, right?
Correct.
So I put them to handle the set biz so I can handle you.
Right.
And because I'm always the front line with estimating. I will always be your person in the trenches with you while we're getting the job and building the job. And so that's kind of how I use my second person.
Well, and that would be great then, because your second person then gets to know everybody.
Yeah.
And then the photographers are like, oh.
It's about relationships.
That is like a recurring theme on this podcast.
Yeah.
It really ends up being about relationships.
You have to take care of them. And you want to give the time and the trust. It's about trust, relationship, which begets trust. Trust begets relationship.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay. So being a photo producer is really hard work.
Yeah.
Your time is not your own. And you always have to be on your A game. Like, you can't make a mistake. So how do you keep it all together? How do you stay sane?
I've made mistakes along the way to understand where not to make the mistakes in the future. Like, just as simple as I was thinking on the way over here this morning, of getting too busy. And I think of saying yes to too many things, so that, and that's been a mistake that I've made in the past, where I was so busy that my photographers didn't feel safe and in their hands. And that's a mistake. And, that may take 10 years to have them come back, but at some point I'll keep rolling along. So how do I manage, I have to, what I'm still learning, to be honest, I'm still learning.
All of us are still learning.
Yeah. And the thing about, I've been pretty much an automaton, work. And my phone, from a very early, the beginning years, I sort of set the precedent. My phone is always on. And sometimes there is a lot of usury, and sometimes you'll get, clients and, agency folk that will text and email and call you until the wee hours in the morning. And so I still have a hard time like turning off my phone and not answering and not responding. Are
you working on creating those boundaries?
It's hard. That's one challenge I have is that I always want to respond. I always want to respond. If I'm available, if I'm sitting watching a show, I will respond, because that's just who I am. There have to be some sane boundaries, and the gal that I'm working with pretty consistently these days, she's the one that she's kind of the reality check for me and tries to remind me of that. So allowing for somebody else to join me and to come into the Trybe Production Collective sort of more frequently and readily available. She can take off some of the heat of the deliverables of getting the production books out or of this or that, and that helps me with my balance. But balance is very important, and boundaries are important. It's just, I'm a single mom, and my daughter is grown and awesome, and on her own path, and I like to work, so it is a bit challenging.
Yeah, I find that myself. You want to be 100% available all the time, but at the same time, I need to have a weekend here and there,
or a dinner.
Not respond. Exactly,
and I'm getting better about that.
And I am too. And the people that I work with, like, we're all so respectful of that. And I tell people all the time, if you don't hear from me, text me or call me, and I'll know that I need to drop what I'm doing and be available to you. And having Lorianne, the two of us. She's a morning person, and we always joke that we wake up at 6 a.m. and we're behind because we're on the West Coast. So she's really great about kind of managing that. And we hope that our photographers don't feel like, because we're on the West Coast, like they're not going to hear from us until noon their time. Like we're working hard. And, 2 of the 3 of my kids are out the door. And my third, is a teenager. So I rarely see him. And my husband travels a lot. So it's easier for me to take the nighttime stuff, so that if things have come up or we haven't gotten to something, we can manage it at night. I can do that at night. But I feel like it's kind of the same thing in production. Like you're always on, and you do have to find the time.
So our jobs aren't too different from one another. I mean,
they're
really
not.
The amount of energy we extend, the care, because we're caring for our people. We're caring for. I want to make sure everybody feels safe and everybody feels good, and we're kind of gardeners, both of us. Yeah.
No, and I think we gravitate to it because of the type of people that we are. So, all right, well, let's talk a little bit about like the specifics of production, like stills versus motion. What percentage do you think most of your jobs have motion on it now?
Yeah, actually they do. And an asset or two, if it's just not social only. A lot of clients, this last job that I had, there was a video element that happened, and they brought their own video person, but still you have to accommodate You sometimes have to give them crew and accommodate in the schedule. So I would say probably 80% is video is still in motion. I am definitely a non-union producer. I have no interest in, being in the
complicated.
Union. No, thank you. I am still a SAG-carrying actress, but a card-carrying actor. But the unions, I don't know. I just can't wrap it's not a place I wish to go. So I'm a non-union motion producer, and again, it's about 80% at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how about the estimating when it comes to that? It says, you just said that you sometimes have to find crew for someone, or, are your photographers and directors looking to you to manage all of that, or is it really varied?
It's varied because a lot of photographers are directors as well.
Mm-hmm.
There are a good number of them that are not interested in jumping to motion or expanding to motion,
right.
But many are doing it because of the necessity. And so they will be the director. Most times our photographers that we have on roster, photographers / directors, have their DP that they like working with.
Right.
And when a budget can support it, we'll bring that DP in and then we'll crew up accordingly. But, typically I lean to my DP because they have a crew that they typically like to work with, depending on which market I'm in. But, oftentimes as well, I'm the one that will, like I did an insane shootout in California where I was the one that was getting, the photographer didn't do a lot of this kind of scope directing. So I set her up with a person that I love working with out there, and
it made the
brought
difference.
His crew. Yeah. So it happens both ways, truly, but it is about 80%, if not more, actually, where there's a motion component, because social has become so important.
So important. Okay, so let's talk about the estimating process a little bit. What does that look like for you? And how can it be better? And how can someone like me help you make that better?
Well, again, the interesting thing, there's no one way anymore. Everybody works differently. So I've got very hands-on reps like yourself that kind of stay in that process while it's being done and helps greatly. So how you and Loren work is always a pleasure, because it's the burden of doing 50. I think I've maxed out at like 15 to 20 different versions for an estimate. And when you're having to, the ball is moving so quickly and you're having to do that many versions, it's helpful to have somebody sort of keeping it all together from what the agency, because, again, I'm sort of jumping over myself here, but there's different ways things are working. Agencies will liaise with you. Sometimes reps will step out and they're just liaising with me. When that happens, and it happens all the time, it's a lot of work. Yeah. And so I do appreciate when a rep stays involved in the process, is the liaison, because sometimes, like you said earlier, I may be on another job or have three other jobs that I'm either wrapping or prepping or on set with.
No, I want to be involved at that process. I want to be the voice of the job to the agency producer. Yeah. At the same time, I will put you in touch sometimes, because there are things that, like, okay, you're telling me, I'm telling her, she's telling me, I'm telling, like, okay, can we just get the two of you talking? Yeah. And maybe I'll be on the call when that happens. But I think mostly it's important to try and have one united front. And at this point, I'm trying to sell my photographer still. Yeah. And you're somebody that is supporting me to do that. So I don't want to put that sales part of what I'm doing. Sales is the wrong word, but we need to put our best foot forward. And for you to have that pressure on top of creating the bid, there's nuances about the conversations that I'm having that I would never expect for you to handle.
But it happens all the time, Heather. And there's been a couple times where it's been overwhelming, where one particular time, which was probably one of the biggest jobs that I've produced, where the reps just stepped out. The director photographers were not available for like the month leading up to it until the week prior, and until the fitting. They were not available until the fitting to be sort of part of it. So I was running the show, and it was a month of my life I'll never get back. It was like morning, noon, and night, a lot of moving parts. It was a very complex job.
Well, and you probably didn't bid enough job days.
Oh, never. You never
First
of all, let me just tell you.
Yeah.
I never am compensated for the amount of work I put in any given job.
Right.
Because budgets won't allow for that.
Right.
And so that's That's the truth, is that sometimes it just goes poof.
Yep.
But that's a part of what I've signed up for.
Well, it's funny sometimes because clients, maybe let's say we bid you, it's a 2-day shoot and maybe you've got 4 prep days, a tech day, 2 shoot and a wrap, right? So what's that?
Sounds
4,
about
6,
right.
7. So maybe 8 days you have on that production and something might change on it. And the art buyer might say to me, can we remove a production day? And I'm always like, no, we can't remove a production day because, sometimes maybe we have to because everybody's removing something. But at the same time, you are working way beyond those 8 days and you already have at this point, we're not even
you haven't even gotten the job.
And you've worked.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate you advocating because that just doesn't, it's not visible to me how many people advocate for us and are aware of that. Our beloved cost consultants.
Right.
Sometimes that's a real challenge, but if I'm starting to remove cost off my crew, I will always take one off mine. I will take monies off mine too. I'm not one that will, if we have to sacrifice, if my photographer really wants this job and is willing to, there comes a point where I will absolutely tell my photographer, you're running the risk of production quality if we take any more off.
Absolutely,
I can't take any more off.
Yeah.
And I will absolutely hold that line. And they, always listen and understand and are on board. But if I'm having to reduce because the cost consultant is telling us so, to match the lowest bid, which is so unfortunate these days.
Yes.
At some point, I'll say this will risk the production quality.
Would you rather reduce your rate or reduce your number of days?
I will reduce my rate. I will write in the memo. This is a courtesy rate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think I've done it both ways, but I think just off the cuff right now, that's probably what I would prefer to do.
Yeah.
But I will always write in there, this is a courtesy rate.
No, us too. We offer discounts on fees. We'll put it as a negative number. We'll do a production line discount that's because we don't know where it's going to come from yet.
I think it needs to be visible.
And I want credit for it. I don't want, if you are...
And if they come back and they are expecting that same thing, if it's not visible to them to understand, you know what, you got a deal on this one because of the budget. I don't want to be held to that next time.
Well, where it falls apart sometimes is when you give the discount, I did give the discount, and what's presented to the client is a number, and they don't see the discount. Then the next time they come back and they expect that, which, look, if they're coming back, that means they're loyal, and I'm probably going to give them the same discount. But I think the expectation should be, there should be a recognition that like, this is what we usually get for this. This is what our producer usually charges for this, or whatever the situation is for that discount.
That's the thing that is hard, because we don't have visibility of how we are being pitched.
Right.
And, so that's just part of the...
It really is.
Things that are not equitable.
So do you ever bid multiple photographers on the same project? It
has happened. Yes, it has happened. And again, this was back quite a while ago that I learned the lesson about the respect of, if you're being asked to bid on something. It has happened, of course, because before I expanded to LA and started, expanding my roster and where I work in Chicago, there's a very small amount of people that do what I do. And there's a small group. We're all friends.
Right. So you're going to get the calls from multiple people.
I am a very seasoned producer in this town. And so if I do get a call, I absolutely, for several years now, I will give the respect to the first shooter, say, hey, I just got bid. I just got asked to bid this with somebody else. Are you okay with it? If they're not, fine. No problem. I have no problem saying no. I am already bidding. But often I think the seasoned shooters understand that it's about, if two producers, unless the approach is wildly different, the numbers for production are going to be the same. So then it becomes about the work.
Yep.
So for me, I want to give that opportunity to them to understand and sort of explain that. But most seasoned shooters will understand that, right? Unless there's a different approach, my production, a motorhome number is going to be the same.
Right.
This location is going to be the same. I'm not adjusting it. So really, I'm leveling. It becomes more about apples and apples.
I am 100% supportive of it. Yeah. I absolutely agree with it.
So I will always go to the photographer number one. Are you okay with this? And if they are, then I go to the photographer number two. Are you okay with this? And if everybody's okay with this, great.
Yeah.
But if not, no.
Okay.
Yeah, but it has happened a number of times.
Well, and I think from where I sit, I would be always supportive of it because I want you in our court and I want you first of all, I don't want to hold you from getting a job. Like you just got offered 2 out of the 3 bids here.
Yeah,
like, I feel that your odds go up, and I feel the same way about, when I'm offered 2 of the 3 bids. Like that's a win. Yeah. Like I've done my job. That's really positive.
And also, like if photographer 2 is okay with it and I start bidding, I already understand the job. So
exactly.
It's like I've been on 2 times the creative calls, right? So I kind of have the opportunity to really absorb this job, to understand it. And so there's almost like it's a win, Well,
and it comes back to the relationship. I trust you. Yeah. So I know you're not saying, oh, photographer 1 is doing it this way. I think you need to you're hearing you're staying in your lane, in each photographer's lane. But at the same time, you're privy to the bottom line and you are going to make sure, unless the approach is completely different, those numbers are going to be...
There's no reason they would be otherwise.
There was no reason they would be otherwise. Yeah. So I'm very supportive of it. And as you said, most seasoned photographers would be, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you do during the process of estimating and then ultimately on set to foster creativity?
Let's see, to foster creativity. Estimating, I don't find the estimating, I listen a lot. I guess that's a big thing. When I'm estimating, really, it's up to, I'll chat through. I've worked with, I will always say yes to certain shooters that I really love. They're maybe newer in the game as far as getting a bigger budget. And because I want to champion for them, right? So I will listen a lot. I will help them sort out how we do the approach. Sometimes they need to have an ear to sort of like bounce ideas back and forth to figure out how we're going to approach this. So I think the listening piece helps foster success with my photographers. Also, and I love to give feedback on treatments. I love treatments. Treatments speak volumes, and I've given a lot of feedback to certain treatments with the newer shooters.
Do people show you the treatments?
I ask.
You ask. I love that you ask. We don't show them to our producers very much. I mean, sometimes we just don't have the time.
You know what? It informs me about it just informs me. And I really like treatments because really, I kind of pull myself back into the one that's hiring. And it's amazing to see the variety of treatments. And some are way wordy and some are just visual. And I think there needs to be a nice mix of both. And I've seen stuff, there was one time actually not too many years ago where I was bidding 2 shooters and the treatment is what won it. Yeah. And,
what do you make in your experience? What do you think makes a strong treatment?
Again, a clear vision. Because treatments can be as flowery as poems, or creative writing exercises. And I think it needs to be really clear and directed towards how this photographer is going to solve the problem. So a creative, has a creative concept, and they just want to know that the photographer understands what they're trying to accomplish and can help them sort how to get there. Yeah. And so clarity, but a nice mix of visuals and approach. So writing and visuals, I think there needs to be a really nice balance there. And not long ago, again, I was working directly with a photographer and directly with a client, actually, who reached out to me looking for shooters. And so I had the opportunity, again, to pitch a bunch of people. The creatives love this particular person. So we went to the treatment process, and then they didn't have a rep. And this person had like too many pages of visuals. Yeah. Like 27 pages. Yeah. And they just, of course, they're so close to it. It's hard to remove anything because they love everything. And so just really weeding out and sort of finessing. So again, I hope that answered your question.
It does. And, from where I sit and when people ask me about treatments, I really, really always try. And if I get an opportunity to read my photographer's treatments, I really try and remind my photographers that it's so important to answer the creative question. So a lot of times they get caught up in the, when it makes perfect sense, the template of the treatment because they're busy and they're, so it's easy to like put in the relevant images and change it up a little bit. But it's really important to make sure that you're addressing this client specifically and you can't just insert any client name here.
And supporting how to solve the problem.
Yes.
And I think that the more direct that one can be is the better. Is good.
Yeah.
In answering your second part of the question, because you asked basically the creative, how do I do creative, helps foster creative with the estimating, but also on set. By the time we get to set, I always like to just have a happy set with good food and, and have enough support on the production side where I don't have to like be chucking in all the stuff. I've done all that. I've done
You've done all the work ahead of time.
Career.
So,
but also in my career, I've done. I know we'll never ask somebody to do something I haven't done myself. So I've done a lot of the logistical, literal heavy lifting in my career. And anyway, so just having the support for people to handle that, so I can really stay focused on our shots and stay close to the photographer to support, to liaise. And
by you handling all the details ahead of time and on set and making for a seamless production, I think that's the ultimate way to foster creativity. I really like everybody to
be happy.
I know. Photo shoots are such happy places.
It's the small little touches that you bring. I've just started one thing about my new company and the rebranding that I am 100% pushing is recycling, is being good to the earth. So I don't allow single-use plastic on my set. I no longer have water bottles. And I've partnered with a fantastic company out in California that is all about that. So, a small little education on the side and, they bring their own thing and everything, just the visual.
Well, the zero waste productions.
It's been extraordinary. So the footprint of our waste on set was one bag. After being in the desert and shooting for this massive group of people, and
that's fantastic.
Yeah, so that's a really important thing, and so it's bringing something new. It's bringing an awareness of what we need to do. There's so much waste in our industry.
Oh my gosh, there's so much waste in our lives.
Yes, and so I'm trying to make a point there. So a bit of education, some great food, and just everybody comfortable and happy. Is how I try to foster allowing the photographer to do what they do, because when clients are happy, it helps a photographer.
You do such
focus.
a good job at it. Yeah. Okay, so on your website, you have this beautiful quote. It says, "Individually, we are one drop, and together we are an ocean." Who said that? And how does that relate to Trybe?
Well, how it relates, the author is on the website, and I can't pronounce his name.
Can't pronounce his name either. Ryunosuke Satoru?
Yes.
Something like that? Okay.
While researching, so the whole impetus for it was where I wanted to take Trybe. I no longer wanted to do this alone. And I have never been alone all these years that I've been doing it, but just having Zaffarano Productions is the title, and I was alone. I was the one that was sort of driving it and at the top. And I don't want to be at the top. I am a collaborative human being, and I'm as good as the people I surround myself with. So that piece is it just speaks volumes to what I believe in, and I'll go also So that's kind of, and I guess I would speak to the logo.
Yes, let's talk about that.
So I have a beautiful soul who's a really good friend of mine and a senior creative director over at Leo Burnett. And he and I have become quite close. He's a big fan. I'm a massive fan of his. And we just started talking during my rebranding, and he offered to help me with my logo. And as we were talking about it, sort of trying to figure out what it was going to be. Like Trybe, the word Trybe has always meant something to me, because when I went out to LA, expanded my world out to LA, got an apartment out there, and was sort of bouncing back and forth for 4 years. I always would say that I found my tribe of people, and it was just sort of my little group of people that I felt supported my heart, sort of helped me grow, and they were always happened to be on the West Side. But I found a really wonderful group of people that I really make me a better human out there. So I always used to just joke that I found my tribe. And so I had shared that with him. And as we were sort of trying to like grow this idea of what Trybe Production Collective would be, he said, what about if we flip the I and make it about you, not me? Like I, you. And so he came up with this beautiful idea of it. And that's the impetus for why we put the Y, the upside down Y. First of all, visually, it's a beautiful logo.
It is beautiful.
And I wanted the Trybe Production Collective to be able to be shortened to be just Trybe. And anyway, so that was the impetus for that. And it was all my lovely friend Tuan's idea. And so it's, again, about us. And I really value the experience. If we're going to do this production, continuing production, I value how I make the experience for everybody.
Again, that's a reoccurring theme on this podcast, is this idea of being part of a tribe or a team, and recognizing, though we all have very individual roles. I am a rep, there is a photographer, there is an art director, there is an art producer, and we are all like under pressure and have, people are looking to us to deliver, right? So you have the tendency to maybe feel like you're alone in that process, but nobody feels that, because you are really part of this big team, and together you want to create something, whether it be an experience or a photo shoot or, ultimately it's the deliverables, but we all get so much more out of the process. And I think Trybe, and how you're approaching it kind of pays that off really well.
Thank you. Yeah, we're all under these powder kegs of time crunches and everything.
Yeah, powder keg is great.
An hour later, and I need this to estimate by end of day, and so we're all under these incredibly tight deadlines with incredibly tight, big expectations, and we're all like you just said, to just reiterate. And so why not? The more we can realize that we are all in this together, that we all need each other, and we're all sort of feeling these pressures and deadlines, let's at least make the journey, take a breath and make this journey as pleasant as possible.
Yeah. Well, before we end today, I'd love to just kind of, and we've touched on this a little bit, but I haven't asked you the question specifically. People who do what you do, you see how reps work, you see how clients work, you see how agencies work, you see how producers work. Like, you have a firsthand knowledge of it. And our industry has changed and is continuing to change. And no one really knows where it's going to end up or, what the new norm will be. I still feel like we're in this area of flux. So how do you think photographers, what do they need to do to stay relevant? What do producers need to do to stay relevant? What do you see happening around you and the people rising to the top that are kind of surviving here?
I think the people that are rising to the top are the ones that are adapting, the ones that are sort of stepping back and seeing how they can refresh and redo. And I think social media is very important, and I think that should not be overlooked. I think that if you're a photographer and you're not interested in learning motion and jumping into the director wheel, collaborate with somebody. Find somebody that you like working with, because that works beautifully too. But start creating relationships with those that do it, and then you'll be able to be too strong, right? If a job comes up, you've got the people.
The power of collaboration right now is exponential, I think. And then you can help promote each other.
Yes. And that's the thing, I think, that I've been, I've been in this zone now with, sometimes life, this thing comes in waves. And right now my wave is I'm being surrounded and connecting with all these people that are seeing things new and doing and exploring and, even giving your gifts elsewhere to a different cause and just things that matter to you.
Yes. So
like the environment matters to me. And so I'm really trying to make a push to be as environmentally conscious and run a shoot in a way that I'm proud of. So I think that paying attention to what you care about and then implementing that somehow, some way. But again, creating relationships and listening and paying attention to, the world is, I think it would be tough to be a stalwart to decide to not, to dig in your heels somewhere. You're not going to be able to adapt if you don't.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And I think you have to make yourself a little afraid.
Oh, challenge yourself.
You have to challenge yourself and
100%.
And to surround yourself with people who are going to challenge you and maybe scare you a little bit.
And even maybe just simply really think about what you're good at and lean into that. And then if you need assistance elsewhere, find those people. Like if you are not a writer and can't do good treatments, find somebody to help you.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah. Okay, so I always end with one little last question.
Who would I like to meet if
who would play you in a movie?
Yeah.
No, the question is, if you weren't doing what you were doing, what would you be?
I, a while back, started a company, a nonprofit, a real 50c3 nonprofit called Finney Chicago. And it was basically a setup because I got disgusted with the waste in our industry. And so I would jump back into that probably. I would jump back into something that matters and there's a need out there. The reason why I am not pushing that anymore, because when I expanded to LA, nobody would sort of take the handlebars and take the wheel.
I remember that.
Yeah, Finney. So I would probably jump into something that will have an impact, and because it was kind of an amazing experience to understand. There's so many angels out there that are doing things for nothing, working at nonprofits around the city, and the gifts, the joy, the biggest gift that I got was their faces when I would walk in with all this stuff or a truckload of building supplies that we got from, somebody's warehouse, a photographer studio's warehouse. And I'd probably jump into something like that.
That's great. Well, it was so wonderful to have you as a guest.
Oh
my gosh, getting caught up with you in person was a treat. Like there's not enough time to talk with you all day. We were talking like for 45 minutes and I'm like, okay, we need to actually start recording. So this was just a treat. Absolutely. Thank you for coming. Good.
Thanks for listening. In an industry where the rules are always changing, it's helpful to hear from those on the front line. Heather Elder is the visionary behind notesfromorepsjournal.com. Visit her website for industry updates, studying photography and video, and the artist behind the work.